Welcome to Prime Podcast. My guest today is my good friend, and I'm so delighted to have with me Tushar Vashisht, co-founder and CEO of HealthifyMe. Welcome, Tushar, to Prime Podcast.
Shripati, it's such a pleasure to be chatting with you on a podcast instead of our usual actual fireside conversations that we've had since almost 15 years now, since Aadhaar, I believe.
Um,
So very a big pleasure of mine to be here.
Absolutely. So let's launch off right away. What was the inspiration for HealthifyMe?
As you know, it was driven by a personal experience more than anything else. When I joined Aadhaar along with you and others, I come back to India after almost nearly a decade abroad, and I just ballooned up in size. I gained a lot of weight. I gained some 25 kgs of weight while helping the government build Aadhaar, and I realized that. Yeah, and while initially I was beating myself about it, when I kind of looked around and I read the stats, turns out I wasn't the only one. The whole world, unfortunately, has become an increasingly obese and overweight place. We as humanity have gone from being a malnourished civilization for the first time. We've gone to becoming an overweight civilization. From less than 900 million people overweight, we became 2.5 billion people overweight or obese in the last 20 years. So Homo sapiens have predominantly been a malnourished society, but now suddenly 1 in 2 Homo sapiens are overweight or obese. And so it was driven out of personal experience. And as you know, I was able to lose all that weight, become a lot fitter, do half marathons, but I've struggled with weight since as well. And one thing that became abundantly clear is that there are tools and solutions that are needed and that people will need to manage their lifestyle, their metabolic health and fitness. And, it's reversible. It's not a one-way street. Initially, I did that by calorie counting myself and figured that, other people deserve to use tools as well, which allowed them to track their lifestyle, metabolic health and improve it. So that's how, I guess, inadvertently and serendipitously, we started HealthifyMe. The other backstory is that I was living on 100 rupees a day and at the poverty line, if you remember, after Aadhaar and before I started HealthifyMe. And actually at that income level, we couldn't eat any non-Indian food. So that's when
what was the motivation of that? Just to give a little bit of context for our listeners here.
Well, so when I joined Aadhaar, clearly that was to help the average Indian, but I felt like I was doing it from a glass wall. We used to travel in air-conditioned cars and stay in government guest houses. So it wasn't really giving I wasn't empathetic enough to the average Indian. So as I exited Aadhaar, I figured before I get on to do what I want to do, let me go and live like the other half. So go live at the average Indian income, go live at the poverty line and see what an average Indian, what choices and constraints one feels every day. And at that income level, I couldn't track any of the food in terms of nutrition that I was consuming because Indian Foods database didn't exist back then. So we started.
Let me just put a little bit of subtext here because you chose 100 rupees per day because that is the official definition of poverty line, correct?
Actually, 100 rupees a day is the average Indian income. It is the median in Indian income per person, X of rent. So with rent, it's 133%, was 133 rupees. X of rent, it's 150 rupees, and X of rent was about 100 rupees per person per day. And that's where kind of the 100 rupees came out. And then 32 rupees was because that is the poverty line definition. That's what the government determined as the poverty line definition.
Got it. Okay. And so how was that experience?
It was actually quite eye-opening, honestly. We were, I wrote extensively about it, but we realized that there are some very real constraints that people face at that income level. Obviously, one of the core ones was that you cannot get enough protein in your diet, particularly as you start shifting towards 32 rupees a day. The only thing one can really afford is carbs. And unfortunately, the government also subsidizes only carbs, rice, wheat, and sugar. So we are intentionally converting our country into a diabetic population. Intentionally. That was quite a shocking realization. On logistics and travel, one can't travel more than 5 kilometers radius effectively at those income levels because the cost of transportation ends up being too high. So you're kind of living in a bit of a prison, which doesn't allow for job opportunities, mobility, etc. So many, that how insurance is largely driven, but is a huge problem, health or life in urban societies. Because in rural societies, we found that at least the Village Act itself has a social insurance. Community insurance is there. Any adverse effect is taken off by the wider community, and you kind of pay people back. But in urban environments, there is absolutely no air cover for any adverse event. So I can keep going on and on. There were so many. We studied
Mm-hmm.
addiction, we studied nutrition, we studied energy, and every day we'd go out and kind of talk about it. But the nutrition bit was interesting because we realized that people couldn't track protein, and the only way we could realize it is to first of all compute how many carbs and proteins and fats there are in Indian foods. And that led to the birth of a calorie counting Excel. So we were first to create an Excel to track Indian foods and its calorie values and micronutrients and macronutrients by just searching on the internet, and wherever in niches in corners we could find that information, we would put it into an Excel. I was anyway used to the form of calorie counting. I'd used that to lose my weight right before then, but it was in a Western diet form. It wasn't for an Indian diet form. And that's when we were forced to create the first version of an Indian calorie counter in an Excel. And that's when we came up with these various insights for the government and for others. And subsequently, when we exited that experiment, we started looking around as to what company to really build. A lot of people actually started to want that Excel to count their own, calories and proteins and fiber and whatnot in various forums that we would communicate. So initially, we gave that as a Google Sheets. And then it was actually a Prime Ventures partner, Sanjay Swami, who said, "Man, why are you giving it as a Google Sheet? Give it as a website. It'll help. It'll help you also run some analytics as to who's using it, who's not, how many people." But yeah, that's a good idea. Maybe we should convert it into a website. And it was actually, I tell you where it was, at some Rotary event he had organized back then. So
Mm-hmm.
and then slowly that website turned into a mobile app, and then we raised our angel round, and that just kind of got the whole spire, that just got that that snowball moving, and 10, 11 years later, Healthify is what it is today.
So tell me, like, what is Healthify today in terms of its products, and then we'll delve into what are some of the observations from there.
So Healthify is a solution to drive behavior change that then improves metabolic health. Obviously, allowing people to lose weight, get fitter, or reverse their medical condition as a consequence of that. And the way we drive this behavior change is through three things. We have a free app that people can download and use that to measure their own lifestyle aspects around their diet, exercise, fitness, sleep, and stress. And we have a team of 1,000 coaches that people can use to accelerate their journey of behavior change. These are people who keep our customers accountable, provide diet and fitness plans and strategies, and do regular monthly, weekly connects to engage and motivate our clients. And finally, we have a series of connected hardware equipment that you get as free as part of different subscription tiers that you buy with us. These are continuous glucose monitors, connected smart scales, blood work that we run to understand what's happening inside your body and how can we improve that with an evidence-based solution. We also have a strong AI practice underlying our coaching behavior. Our large language model was called RIA, that helped our coaches be very efficient and effective at what they do. And subsequently, we've opened that as well as a low-cost subscription offering, the Pure Play AI offering. So to give you a sense of scale, we do about $40 million a year today. And we've got 250,000 paying subscribers. Half of the paying subscribers use our AI-only service. The other half use some form of coaching, human coaching, combined with the IoT or hardware integration. Meanwhile, we have about 3 million or so monthly active users who use our app for free to get benefit from it.
Okay. So going back, right, how was it is such a counterintuitive thing to get people hooked on to a behavior change, inevitably every health loss, weight loss plan requires, right? And it is such a daunting thing to do. So whenever we think of, when I'm talking to an entrepreneur and it is a consumer play, which HealthifyMe is, you always are concerned that driving behavior change is such a tough thing to do. So did you face that in your early days and now?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think, driving this behavior change is basically going fundamentally against evolution to an extent, right? Like evolution has trained our mind and body to consume more energy when we see energy. Particularly if it is sugar and fats, which are high burn, kind of quick energy consumption, we rush towards it. That's why we all love desserts. And exercising is something our bodies are tuned to deliberately not do, because we're trying to conserve energy. Mind you, until 20 years ago, we were a malnourished civilization since we were created a 250,000 years ago. It's just things have changed now, and our body evolution is not keeping in tandem with that change in terms of overabundance of immediate food. So it is a fundamentally hard thing to do. Having said that, there are well-established practices and principles that allow for that behavior change to happen. The first aspect of all of that is knowledge. So if you are able to see, having a mirror, right? If you're able to see what that food or fitness or exercise is fundamentally doing to your body, and the more real time that feedback is, the stronger your behavior change happens. So, the first time you track a food on Healthify and you get a sense around the nutrition, protein, fat, carbs, fiber, you kind of get a sense around, oh my God, I should probably have less of this and probably have more of that. And then the other way to keep a strong behavior change is by establishing good, smart goals. So these are highly measurable, accountable, result-oriented goals that you can set for yourself. Smaller goals that you're small also is an important piece. So not lofty, tremendous goals, but small, measurable, accountable goals that you can keep to get better every day. That allows for behavior change. And then finally, even our coaches play a huge role. So, left by ourselves, I think we often die. Our motivations are short-lived usually. But when you have an accountable person, we think of our coaches as your personal health board, that hold you accountable to your goals that you've set, right? So now it results in a tremendous change, because now you have someone that you actually are held accountable by and you engage with. So I think our coaches play a very strong role in tying it all together and then driving that behavior change. AI can do that too, but just not as effectively. To give you an example, an average paying subscriber with us loses about between 5 and 6 kgs of weight within a period of 180 days, will probably improve their HbA1c and cholesterol count values by more than 15%. And AI, a subscription also enables to do that, but probably about 2/3 of the way. So about 2/3 of that result AI is able to deliver. But the Human+AI is kind of what really takes it to another level. This is getting published in a fantastic Stanford paper that's currently under peer review about the efficacy of human and efficacy of AI and efficacy of Human+AI, and how that works with our customers. So it's a cool thing to look at.
Where are your customers coming from? So I have really two questions here, and let me ask both of them. One is that, acquiring customers, right? So I'd like to get your thoughts on, like, how much of a challenge was that for HealthifyMe, and how do you actually acquire the customers? Because going B2C direct is such a tough task. That's one. And the second one is that I'm looking at the 250,000 paying customers and 1 million users, you said, Tushar, who are actually using the app on
3 million, but yes.
3 million users. So what is the composition of that? And that tell us a little bit about, where this product, HealthifyMe, is most effective.
So ours is a classic case study of a B2C freemium model, where we've basically, the reason we were able to acquire efficiently is because we have this really good, strong, highly rated free app that creates a strong funnel, for us. So a lot of people come and engage with us. And that's what we meditated on a lot for a few years. So the first 3-4 years was just in building a great free solution that people can engage with and find lots of value in. And then we started our monetization levers on top of that, except for just monetizing via ads, because at that time, certainly there was not a strong enough ads-based revenue model that was evident in India. But we started monetizing that by a model that would further accelerate our consumers' journey towards their goals and towards their behavior change objectives, right? Which was the human coaching component. So that's how we were able to acquire, and that's how we're still able to acquire consumers efficiently, because our cost of acquisition from a customer's vantage point is really zero. The customer doesn't have to pay anything to start engaging with the Healthify brand and its product, and start to see that change. Now, and then in that journey with us, we're able to then monetize that by selling them to our either the 200 rupees a month AI service, or the 2000 rupees a month coaching service, or the 4000 rupees a month coaching with a bunch of integrated gadgets. We call it Healthify Pro service, etc.
Got
But
it.
the genesis of it was having a free app that also allows for good LTVs in the business, because once you're done with your paid subscription, you don't have to completely churn out and forget about us as a brand. You can continue the free journey with us all the time. So our free app is a tremendous source of engagement as well as of acquisition. Um, and in terms of where customers come from, well, if I were to show you a map of HealthifyMe user base, it's very analogous to a night sky map of India. It looks exactly like that. So we'd like to believe wherever there is electricity, there is HealthifyMe today, largely. So it comes from a long tail of users. I think the top 10 cities power up about half of our customers in revenues, and then the long tail powers up the other half. So it's not just a metro only phenomena. It's a pretty wide phenomena. And in fact, we solve for a lot of access to quality coaching, access to quality knowledge and information in those markets and areas, which don't have it otherwise.
Not just like a tier one, SECA, all right. It's like a customer profile. You think that it actually goes deeper?
I think the SEC A plus, possibly B plus is still, I think A and A plus is probably still the customer profile, but it's just that A and A plus is also divided quite a lot in the long tail. It's not that it only exists in tier one cities. So I think wherever there is SEC A plus, HealthifyMe exists for them quite well. So while it is still a little bit more upwardly mobile, top tier income levels, but it is spread out in a lot of long tail cities and towns and even villages at times. So A plus, maybe even B plus territory uses Healthify quite efficiently today to be able to track their lifestyle for sure. Obviously, conversion rates are slightly richer in the top cities. They're slightly depressed in the lower cities. But there are exceptions to that trend also that we see.
Got it. So let me actually change attacks a little bit and ask you about your journey from a fundraise standpoint. We've spoken about it in the past. We have talked about it, which is that it was not a smooth sailing, right? From where you at a 40 million ARR, which is obviously very substantial. So you have talked about a number of like near-death experiences in the life of HealthifyMe. So, take us through a few of those during your fundraise cycles.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think if there's anyone who's tuning in who's like just at the early days of starting a company, you should probably know that you are going to run out of money at some point or the other in this journey. And I angel invest also myself decently, and I often tell my portfolio companies that the first time you run out of money is a good rite of passage. You can kind of check that box and feel comfortable and happy that you're off that. You can kind of, that's one of the milestones you need to cross, just like you need to cross a couple of other key milestones, and mark that date, smile, feel happy, and get through it, because it is going to inevitably happen. So plan psychologically for it. But the first time we had it was pretty scary as well. I mean, you witnessed it. We talked about it as well at that time of raising capital, and in hindsight, obviously, I know both of us wish that we had joined hands back then. But in 2014, 15, I think 2-3 years after starting the company, we didn't have a revenue model. We had a great app, very high engagement, strong product metrics, good quality. In fact, we were rated by Google as the best app of India in 2014. But in 2015, late 2014, but simultaneously, we couldn't really figure out a way to monetize. So we were struggling with that lever, and we were talking to various investors as well, and this was a common feedback that we were getting. But but once we were able to start to monetize, when people start to see the revenues trickle in, it was easy to establish a case for fundraising. Yeah, the first time we were out of money for about 3 months, and it was a difficult one. And I remember telling my employees once that, hey, you're all volunteers at this point. So if you'd like to continue volunteering, I'd appreciate that. And if we get funding, I'll make it whole for you. But if we don't, then I don't know. I'm trying my best, but I can't promise. We can't pay salaries. Tough conversation. Thankfully, everybody stayed. People were really passionate about the mission. And I think everybody genuinely was having a great time working together. So they're like, we don't really care about doing anything else. So 3 months in, we were able to secure our seed round. So we had an angel round of 1 crore in 2012. And then we had a seed round of $1 million roughly in 2015. And 2014 was a very tumultuous period because there were 2-3 term sheets that we got, but we couldn't complete. Either the terms weren't good or they were withdrawn or that we couldn't convince ourselves, but we were able to land a round in 2015. 2016 was our Series A of 6 million, where Chirate, Inventus, Bloom joined in. 2018 was our Series B, led by Samsung, Sistema, and a few other people. And then 2021, we had a large Series C. It was actually a combination of some of the capital we raised in 2019 as a convert note, plus an equity raise that we did. So that was a $75 million total round. This was co-led by Leapfrog and Khosla Ventures and a bunch of other, the Saudi PIF guys. Elm joined and a few other partners joined from different parts of the world, Unilever and others, et cetera, et cetera. But that was a large round of Series C, and since then that's been going well. So we had we went sort of -3 months in 2014, but even during Series A, we kind of came close to the wire. I think we were a few weeks out of cash, maybe like 2 or 3 weeks out of cash. And Series B, I think we were probably just like 2 months away or something of running out of cash. But after that, it's been easy. After that, it's been relatively easy. Series C, we had a few months to go, and now onwards, I'm assuming we'll always have a few quarters to go at any given time before the next round kicks in, if at all. So it's easier to manage financially with scale. It's harder to do so when you don't have a significant business model. So yeah, and it's kind of very common to run out of money.
So mentally, how do you deal with that situation, right? I mean, you have, as an entrepreneur, you have vested, so much emotionally. Forget the financial investments, and you have folks you are working with, and all of you are excited. So while it is true that most startups will face kind of the other financial crunch at some time in their lives, in their journey, how do you say you deal with it? What would you recommend in terms of just when everybody has left the office and you are actually still working?
There's no way to sugarcoat it. It's a very tough experience to go through, without a doubt. Having said that, there are ways you can be ready for it. You should be aware that the company can shut down at any given time. Anything that you do might be the last time you're doing it. So knowing that, death is a reasonable possibility helps. That when it comes, it's not like a complete shock. Complete shutdown is a decent possibility. Second piece is that running out of money does not have to equal death. So being aware of that is also important. So I think when you run out of money, a few tricks and tips in that thing was, if your co-founding circle itself has all the relevant and complete skill sets to run a firm, that really is valuable. And perhaps as you scale, at least your sort of leadership core should ideally have that set of core skill sets. That really helped us. Sachin and I would often joke that, yeah, if everything goes to zero, you and I can still the minimum number of people required to run Healthify is between you and I, we can kind of manage, and we used to say that till like shockingly late, right? Like well past our Series A, that if it really came down to the bone, we got this. So having that comprehensiveness in the skill set is important. If you feel like that skill set resides out to a core leadership member, maybe even consider getting that person as a co-founder, because that's good. And then or keeping the leadership enough infused with stock options, equity, and purpose that people stick around when the going is really, really tough, and then reward them for it so they'll stay loyal with you for the long time as well. So I think because you have those relevant core set of people who will stick around and stay with you, and you prepared them that listen, and oftentimes we joke about it. Yeah, we used to have these like plan A, B, and C. Plan A is to do this, plan B is to do that, and plan C, there was always that plan C that was very clear amongst this core group of people that this is a little bit of a, put your shell on and power through, things like that. In fact, us running out of money was brilliant because it gave us the necessary hunger to pivot to find revenues.
Hmm.
Um, and if you may remember, even in our conversations back in the day, one of the core things we were talking about is, and I still remember it, is how do you get to 100 paying customers a month,
Yeah.
Shripati? And that was an important part of our journey, that we needed to have the focus to get to 100 paying customers a month. So, and that focus also is really valuable in those times. I remember there was this period when everybody was a salesperson for those like 2-3 months. So, including every last engineer, customer support, coach, me, everyone, like we're all trying to sell because we're trying to dig ourselves off that grave. And that was a very valuable thing. It kind of taught us what the company, it kind of created that necessity, created that invention of a business model. So being prepared for it, handling it well, seeing it as an opportunity for a possible innovation to come through, is very, very helpful sometimes. It's quite cathartically innovative to be in that zone. Same thing happened during our Series B when I was looking at a very short runway and I was not sure what's going to happen. And I realized that now the company's at a stage when it's not like just me and Sachin can run it, or we can total it down. And I needed it was very critical for us, so that kind of forced us to, we all locked ourselves up, about the top 10 people, into Royal Orchid actually for a week, and we all like lived together and brainstormed around how can we use a strong tech solution that can change our margin profile, because now it was all about margin.
Hmm.
Because that's how Ria was born. Literally the first version of Ria was written at that Royal Orchid with a few people. And I freshly minted, I like took it for a spin to a bunch of investors, and literally Samsung was one of the guys who kind of came through and yep, we see this. So I think being close to that edge actually can be quite a motivator to drive some very necessary innovation.
I think it's a good point. I think it comes across as very preachy when we say that, well, too much money can harm a company, but it really can, because then the motivation to do and drive some of the changes required in the company, as you mentioned, are just not there.
Yeah,
And
I think
the thing
particularly
with
at an early stage. Once you have the PMF,
particularly,
once you've got your unit economics geared up, I mean, then you could really use the capital. But until then, I agree with you. It can harm the company sometimes.
exactly, and but you can use the crisis to actually not be paralyzed, but really double down on razor focus, addressing the problems which you're hearing, which are coming between you and getting the investor in, is what you have done in the two cases that you mentioned. So, well,
Precisely.
so if you were to like back 10 years and advise your 20 something selves, uh, you know, who's raring to start a health tech company, what should an aspiring entrepreneur today who's interested in health tech think about?
This is a question I get asked often, and I feel somewhat, being very brutally honest, I feel a bit flummoxed about it because I'm not sure what I would tell myself. I mean, frankly, my honest answer will be like, listen, just do you. You're doing well. Just do you, be good. But if I had to take a crack at things I could have done differently, I think one of them would have been is to be even mentally calmer, more patient through the crises. I think the first time a launch doesn't work, or the first time your demo fails, or the first time you run out of money, or the first time a key employee quits, is just the first time you deal with something which is significantly adverse, difficult. It really crushes you as a founder because you're not used to that. So obviously the second and the third and the fourth and the fifth time becomes much easier. So, and then at some point, all of you kind of, your mind gets more equanimous to the stresses and strains. So I would have told myself that, look, there'll be a lot more failure than there'll be a success before the eventual success comes in. So be ready for that along the way. Don't let it bother your head so much. It's all part of a video game. It's like a Mario. Sometimes you see a mushroom, sometimes, some duck comes and gets you or whatever, right? Like you kind of have to, and you get a few tries at it. So don't worry about it. So that would have at a mental level. At a professional level, I would have probably told myself to spend and invest on something I'm telling myself even now is to invest a lot more of my time in hiring and maintaining good talent. So I think I certainly have been a case of somebody who takes talent for granted in that sense to an extent. But listen, you're here, go figure it out. It's a startup, and I don't think I think I wait for serendipity to hit me to hire. I'm not as aggressive and as deliberate about hiring and culture as I probably should be, and probably certainly should have been. I think I've gotten a lot better over the last few years, but I should have been. I would have told myself to think even more ambitiously and aggressively about my company than I did. There are pros and cons. If I had thought more ambitiously and aggressively, I might not have had the patience to get here. But at the same time, I do think that Nandan had once said, right, that think big because it costs the same to think big or think small. So think big. So now finally we have a clear mission statement, which is to healthify 1 billion. But I wish I had thought with that premise much earlier. And I would do things faster. Easier said than done, but I think I think my pace now in hindsight was excruciatingly slow. Oh man, if I had to start my,
You
I'd
also
say
had a lot
like,
less money to work with, by the way. So
I did, but I just had lesser awareness, and I guess that's a problem of of experience, right? So I was just less aware about what pace you can really move at. Now that I've tasted that, for example, if I ever had to start something again, or even when I do things now, it's just it took me about 2, 3, 4 years to kind of get my groove of pace. But I think I could have done that much faster at that time. Like, don't wait for solutions to be created. I mean, why? Now, first, anytime you want to innovate, the first thing we often ask is why. And when I talk to my angel companies as well, I'm like, why do you need to code for this? You shouldn't be coding. You should not be coding to get your PMF, right? Code after you've kind of gotten at least a sense of PMF. Pivot, iterate super fast. So yeah, those are the things I would have probably told myself back then.
fair enough. Which are the areas in health that you're most excited about new innovation, new opportunities?
Without a doubt, right now, large language models. I think GPT and LLMs are going to fundamentally reshape technology, reshape businesses, and to an extent, reshape human civilizations in a big way. So I think there's just a lot of opportunity there in practically every domain. And I'd really love to see what kind of innovations people can do in health tech. We are ourselves working very seriously on it. But it'll be great to get that perspective, to get that knowledge, to see how that people are able to make sense of using LLMs and emergent AI technologies. So, I remember in the last 10 years, I've seen a lot of technology hypes and cycles and faps coming. Right? There has been the crypto madness, there's been the VR madness, there's been IoTs that was once talked about, and oftentimes these were treated as deep tech, and AI was kind of in that picture somewhere. But in my opinion, none of the other technology stacks have scaled or are going to have any meaningful large impact on healthcare. But I think LLM is huge, particularly in health tech. Why? Because healthcare at its core is an advisory service at its core, right? Like while there's and it's an advisory service based off of a lot of prompts. That's what a doctor does. That's what a nutritionist does. That's what a trainer does. That's what that's what anybody does. You get a lot of prompts in the form of diagnostics or data or systems or lifestyle, and then you provide specific actions, and or in cases motivation or knowledge or content that you provide on basis on prompt. So that's why I do think it's like ripe for LLMs to really be disruptive in a very large way. I do think that now is the time for consumer meets healthcare in a very large way, and the world as well. Because on one hand you have 3 billion people who are obese, on the other hand you've got AI technologies that are making access extraordinarily affordable, and you have cost of collection of data and prompts is very low. All of us have smart gadgets, device systems that are generating a lot of data. So Andreessen Horowitz just took a nice paper out talking about how they believe that the next $1 trillion company is likely to be a health tech, and their words were consumer health tech play, and because of these trends, and I for sure believe in that, and so it'll be interesting to see how people navigate their ways towards that using AI and a bunch of these new emergent tech.
So Tushar, as we come towards the end of our conversation, there's a couple of more questions, right? One, this is a really tough time right now in the startup funding ecosystem. About 22 and continuing in 23 with funding levels down and actually startup formation also down. So if you're an entrepreneur, what would your sort of 2 cents to them?
I think it is stage dependent. If you're a sort of at the -1 stage where you're thinking about jumping and doing something, I would say the time is right. It's brilliant. And it's always right, frankly, to take the leap because you have to go through a journey of discovery, of figuring out, of doing, initial pilots and beta studies before you can even get to doing something, right? And I do think that, one should not regret anything in life. And if you don't do something, you're likely to regret. If you do something, probably not much of a regret. And if at all, in today's ecosystem, would appreciate and reward you for taking that risk. Other serendipitous paths will come as a part of doing that. Like, my wife, Neha, just started Wobble. And, she's just closed her angel round. And it's amazing to see her growth in the sidelines in the last 9 months from what, six months since she started the company to blitzing through so much of experience, knowledge, and awareness, which I didn't see in the 2 years prior to that when she was working with a large firm. I think for them, the right time is now. And I think angel raising is not that hard. It's more perennial as well. I think it is still individually driven. So I don't think there we are seeing any much difference. So get into your initial and your angel investments is possible, is doable. India has an incredible angel investor ecosystem now, which it didn't have back then. So I would say absolutely it is right now. In fact, it is now because by the time you'll be ready to take any reasonable form of VC capital or growth capital, markets would be back. So, it's just this is the best time ever. I think the greatest companies were built in recession, and I read some stat. For more senior founders, people who are at like the A or the B route, it's definitely a difficult one, a difficult time right now. And even for the C, I think everybody should look at conserving cash, conserving runway, and having enough breathing room. It is good to plan for, default on or default alive status. That means that within whatever cash you have, use that to practically get to a point visibly where you can kind of become profitable if you have to. So if you already have high conviction in your game, you build something decent, you have a PMF, you kind of have the unit economics sort of figured out at a scale, I would say conserve cash, look at more organic forms of growth right now. Consider doing experiments in new areas because you have luxury of time and you probably don't have, or align your board for not having strong pressures on growth right now. And once you have that pressure off of you, dedicate that towards innovation and new discoveries and new initiatives that can give you disruptive pathways when markets come back. So yeah, that's how I would make sense of the current environment and broadly,
Probably they're a
basically.
lot less noisy, right? As entrepreneurs go about both discovering their business models or growing their business models. In times like this, there's a lot less noise and less of marketing dollars being spent, so you can actually do a lot more efficient growth. And let me close with this for the future of HealthifyMe itself, Tushar. So, what is next for HealthifyMe in the immediate term and perhaps in a 4-5 year horizon?
Oh, this is a phenomenal time. I'm very excited about being at Healthify today. Because I think we've established in India a leadership position, a market dominant position here. We've had a cumulative user base of 35 million that have joined our system, who we have access to and who we can get back to and who trust us. So in India, we're thinking of how we can diversify, and obviously grow our current digital, fitness and fat loss subscriptions, but also diversify into areas of condition management, disease reversal, see if we can add connected stacks onto it, like healthy foods, like supplements, snacks, staples, or other connected areas, which can allow for our promised delivery be that much stronger. I can see a line of sight towards India becoming a comfortable $100 million business in the next couple of years. Think through, O2O kind of models of growth, even beyond online growth, etc. And continue to hold the leadership position here. While at the same time, I'm now beginning to evaluate international. We did a small pilot in Southeast Asia. We're quite inspired by that, even though COVID kind of put a little bit of a shadow on it for a couple of years. but now we're looking at Middle East quite seriously. And because if we have to healthify 1 billion, then eventually we also have to be a global company and have to be relevant and present in other markets. Our product today, from a tech stack standpoint, is probably superior to anyone in the world. And our pricing is the most competitive. And there are inorganic, partnership-driven, and other ways that we're thinking of grappling the global markets as well, taking a stab there. So I think this is a great time to acquire companies in the market. And we're looking at M&As quite significantly, both in India and abroad. Eventually, the goal is to obviously healthify 1 billion, but to ideally build a company that's at least a few $100 million in top line in the next 5 years or so. And somewhere in that journey, look at going public. Or look at other alternatives. And I'm excited about what those 5 years will include.
Indeed. And all the best for an exciting future for HealthifyMe and in your quest to healthify 1 billion. And thank you for joining us, Tushar.
Of course. Absolutely been my pleasure, as always. Catch you soon enough.
Dear listeners, thank you for listening to this episode of the podcast. Subscribe now on your favorite podcast app for free, and you'll be the first one to know when new episodes are available. Just search for Prime Venture Partners Podcast in Apple Podcast, Spotify, Castbox, or however you get your podcasts. Then hit subscribe. And if you have enjoyed the show, we would be really grateful if you leave us a review on Apple Podcast. To read the full transcript, find the link in the show notes.